All right, folks, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time here, whether you're an Oilers fan or not. We're doing an Oilers series recap video here talking about Game 5. The Edmonton Oilers are off to the second straight Stanley Cup conference final, two back-to-back years, and their third time in 4 years. What a win, what a game. Two back-to-back shutouts for Stuart Skinner, who I want to focus on first. This isn't really going to be a super long video. There's not a whole lot to talk about. Obviously, only one goal was scored in the game, and outside of that, I don't want to talk too much about like the future playoff round because obviously we'll make a series preview video for that specifically. But I do want to start with Stuart Skinner. Stuart Skinner has shut me up in so many ways. Two back-to-back shutouts after I absolutely flamed him for Game 4, Game 3, and I've been ripping on him quite a bit throughout the whole playoff since it started. But he has shut me up, and I really, really hope he can keep up the play because if we get this from Stuart Skinner consistently, the Edmonton Oilers are going to have a much easier time trying to complete this mission. No question about it. So he's been playing absolutely fantastic since Game 3 happened, and it's so good to see. He was a massive part in beating Dallas last year, right? He outplayed Jake Ottinger in the conference finals last year against Dallas. So if he can find that level of game again, that's going to be huge against a very dangerous Dallas team that we might be playing in the third round. So that is going to be massive. Next up on the list, Kasperi Kapanen, a guy who hasn't been in the lineup for a while. He got his first look in the playoffs last game. I thought he actually had a really solid game last game, throwing big hits, making things happen, but, unfortunately his line wasn't credited, wasn't rewarded with a goal. And tonight, or last night, he scores the overtime winner, the series winner to send Edmonton to the conference finals. And that was a pretty funny goal, like a kind of slap in the face goal to two fan bases. First, the St. Louis Blues, who I'm not saying they regret waiving Kasperi Kapanen by any means, but I do think, with the whole like Broberg and Holloway storyline that's been going on all year, it was pretty funny to watch a former Blue, score the series winner for us. And then to follow that up, we watched the Toronto Maple Leafs get massacred before the Oilers game yesterday. And you've got a former Leaf in Kasperi Kapanen scoring, series-winning goals to send his team to the third round. So it's pretty funny how that happens. But Kapanen is just added to a long list of players on this Oilers team that have been playing phenomenal. This is the best that the Oilers have looked in the McDavid and Draisaitl era, and I don't really think that's a hot take by any means. The depth is producing at crazy levels. The Oilers have the best depth in the playoffs right now, no question about it. Every single guy is buying in. They're all in. They're trying to win every single game, and it's great to see. And I think that's a huge testament to the atmosphere that McDavid and Draisaitl have created in Edmonton. I think those guys are willing to die for those two players every night, game in and game out, and it's quite remarkable to watch. And it's also just such a good thing in the long run because the more that we can rely on our depth guys to score the big goals for us, which has been quite a lot in these playoffs so far. I mean, you look at last game, Draisaitl did get an assist on the goal, but Kapanen scores. The game before, we get 2 goals from Henrique and a goal from Kane. The Kane goal was assisted by McDavid, but he didn't really do a whole lot on that play. Like, we're winning games on the back of our bottom 6, and it's allowing McDavid and Draisaitl to conserve themselves as we get deeper into the playoffs. We all remember last year, Stanley Cup final. By the time we got to Game 6, McDavid and Draisaitl were so burnt out. And we still won Game 6, but Game 7, man, those guys had nothing left in the tank. And of course, you want your players to leave it all out there whenever they play a playoff game, but it's a bit different when McDavid had to literally play like a God-sent player. Not that he isn't God-sent, but McDavid had to play like better than he typically plays just to get Edmonton back into that series. And I feel like he overexerted himself and completely drained everything he had to get them to Game 7. And then by the time we got there, he had nothing left to give. And you can't blame him. So it's really nice to see the depth winning us a lot of games early in this playoff run, because now that we're moving into the back 8 game, the back 8 wins that we need, in the event that our depth starts to, whittle away and we're not getting as many depth goals anymore, McDavid and Draisaitl have so much energy that they can contribute so much more and drag this team to the Stanley Cup final and potentially farther in the event that they need to. But let's hope that this team continues to, play well as far as the depth is concerned. Defensively, this team has been absolutely stellar. And it's, funny. McDavid had an interview yesterday. McDavid had an interview yesterday where he was clearly fed up with the questions about, Edmonton and their capabilities defensively. The Oilers have proven so much throughout this year and last year that they are so good defensively. I don't think they're the best defensive team left in the playoffs, but they're up there. They're top. Actually, they might be the best team defensively. They have done a really good job of limiting high danger scoring chances, and just like shot suppression has been really good. They've done a really really solid job. And that's attributed to Bouchard playing like the best defenseman on earth since Game 2 against the Kings. Wallman and Klingberg have been a pairing that I don't think anybody saw coming. John Klingberg looks like it's 2016. Brett Kulak is a rock as always. Darnell Nurse has actually been playing quite well this whole series against Vegas. I wouldn't say that he had any truly terrible games. And Troy Stecher has come in and been a perfect partner for Nurse. And Ekholm is still not back, which is another huge benefit to Edmonton getting to winning this series so early. I'm really hoping that just one team in the other left, either the Caps, the Jets, or the Leafs. I'm hoping one of those teams pushes for a 7-game series. Let the Oilers get as much rest as they possibly can and allow Ekholm as much time as he can before the third round starts to rest. Because if Ekholm comes back, this team is going to be so much better. I would say that we are looking like Ekholm. I don't think Ekholm is our best defenseman. I do think Bouchard is our best defenseman just because of how dynamic he is. But as far as most consistent and well-rounded, it's definitely Matthias Ekholm. So the chance of getting him back is massive. The big question, though, that you have to ask in that sort of situation is, is Ekholm... with Ekholm coming back, how does this Oilers group change? Because you can't take John Klingberg out of the lineup, at least not the way he's playing right now. And I mean, I'd like to think obviously the sacrifice is Troy Stecher, but Troy Stecher does a really good job of making Darnell Nurse seem good, like genuinely good. So how I would structure the decors if you choose to take Stecher out of the lineup is, considering Kulak and Bouchard played fantastic, put Kulak with Bouchard on the first pairing, put Ekholm with Nurse on the second pairing, and then Wallman and Klingberg on the third pairing. However, I don't hate the idea of running an 11-7 strategy. In fact, I think you actually need to start with an 11-7 strategy because look at the Dallas Stars. Miro Heiskanen came back last game, his first game back since, I believe, February, and Dallas went with 11 forwards, 7 defensemen. Miro Heiskanen had just under 15 minutes of ice time to ensure that, he could adjust and acclimate to the intensity of playoff hockey. So Ekholm probably will need something similar. So I think running 11-7 to start could work really well. And then maybe if it's working fantastic, you just keep riding it out. Although I don't know which forward you take out of the lineup to accommodate for that, but that's the benefit. That's what it means to have so much depth, is you feel like you can't take anyone out of the lineup because everyone's contributing. This team has no passengers, point blank, period. So this was I mean, look, I know in my initial bracket I didn't predict Edmonton to beat Vegas, but that was based mainly on how Edmonton was playing coming into the playoffs. But I did say that if this team finds their game and merges together as a team, Skinner gives us good goaltending, we can win that series, and literally all of those things happened. And I'm not giving away series predictions for the next round. That's for the series preview videos. Like I said, there wasn't really a whole lot to talk about as far as this game was concerned. It was a great defensive game by the Oilers, a Stuart Skinner masterclass, and another showcasing that Edmonton can hang in these low-scoring games that are intense and down to the wire. The Oilers don't need to score 7 goals every game just to win, or 4 or 5. They can win games by scoring 1 goal. And that's huge if you're a team that's trying to make a deep run in the playoffs, because not every game is going to be a 5-1 win. Not every game is going to be a game where you can score at will like the Edmonton Oilers sometimes do. So it was a really good showing tonight, and I think this was a very telling game of what this group is capable of as we continue to trudge along. And like I said, I just hope we get as much rest as we possibly can, and not just for Ekholm's sake, but also for the sake of all the players that have been playing. Obviously, some of these guys have gotten injured, whether we know whether that's clearly visible or not. So the more time these guys get to just like decompress and rest and heal up as much as they can is huge. The guy that I'm looking at is Leon Draisaitl, who I do think had two really good back-to-back games to close out this series, but obviously we're not getting the same levels of offensive contribution out of him as we usually do. But I also think that's a mix of him being hurt and also focusing a little bit more on his defensive game. He really shut down Jack Eichel in these last two games. That line was incapable of generating anything. And I do believe that Dallas, who it's looking more likely that Edmonton is going to be playing in the second round, they obviously have, I think, a little bit more of a dangerous team than Vegas at this point in time. So the Oilers are going to have to make sure that they're playing very sound defensively. And I mean, the other thing that's huge is like not only is Draisaitl, playing a strong defensive game and all of these things, but he still contributes offensively when the need arises. He had a quote, Dom Lucian posted it, I'll throw it up on the screen, saying that, Draisaitl is okay with sacrificing a few months of stats if it means being the last team standing. And that is such a great quote to get from a guy who has been absolutely torched pretty much his whole career for not being a good defensive forward. I do believe that Draisaitl could have gotten and should get Selke votes. Unfortunately, he doesn't really penalty kill very often, so I think that does hurt the ability of being voted in for the Selke quite substantially, but he is so underrated defensively and has really made that a massive focus point of his game this whole season. But with that said, obviously, the toughest matchup is still ahead of us. It's going to get harder every single series, although Oilers fans probably would agree with me when I feel like the Kings were the tougher matchup, but like I've already said, I feel like those first two games the Oilers threw away by just playing horribly. And again, it's not to discredit the LA Kings because they looked very motivated to beat us, but so far I feel like Vegas was easier than the LA Kings to some degree. But I can say with confidence that if we do get Dallas, I think we can all agree that they probably aren't going to be an easier matchup than Vegas or LA was. But we'll talk about that series more in my series preview video whenever that other round ends and whenever that series ends. I'm super excited for that, and I'm loving this Oilers group. It is so amazing to watch, and it's been great. I've been loving it. One of the things I've noticed about myself is I'm actually not like celebrating as much as I was last year whenever we scored goals. And I think part of it is because like this is only the first two rounds and we still have such a long way to climb before we're back to where we were last year. I think maybe now that we're getting into the in theory the toughest series against potentially the Dallas Stars, I think that's where the excitement is going to come from me a little bit more, where I'm going to be, yelling when they score and cheering and stuff like that. Not that I haven't been cheering. I just haven't been jumping off my couch and yelling like I was last year. And I think it's because I expect it of this team now. We've been here before. I've been here before as a fan. Like, this is nothing new. So it's now we're getting into territory where this team is really, I think, really going to surprise me. That right there is the showcasing of how these late nights have been affecting me. As I've mentioned before, more on my TikTok. I live on the East Coast, just outside of Toronto. So these Oilers games are always later, 9:50 p.m. They usually start. So I'm usually awake on an Oilers game day until almost 2 o'clock, and then I have to wake up at 7 for work in the morning. So it's pretty brutal out here. But I think that's kind of all I have. I don't really think I'm forgetting anything major. I'll talk a lot more about the future for this team as far as the next round goes whenever we get that matchup confirmed with a series preview video. I hope you guys have been enjoying the content. If you're here from the TikTok, I really appreciate it. If you're not from the TikTok, go check out my TikTok. The link will be in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, please hit that like button. Feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you really, really liked it, I wouldn't mind a subscription if you're so willing. It's always appreciated but never needed. And I will catch all of you guys in the next video.